Hello again, friends. Welcome to Investment Immigration Conversations. I'm Carolyn Lee, Principal and founder of Carolyn Lee PLLC, a U.S. investment immigration law firm dedicated to helping clients build their futures with investment immigration. Well, what a delight to be back after a planned 1-month hiatus in August. I hope everyone had a wonderful summer and took some time off. Well deserved, all of you. So today, this being our September 2025 webcast, is about closing out fiscal 2025 and seeing where we are in investment immigration, in particular EB-5, as we cruise into this really most important of years in the post-RIA EB-5 landscape. And we're definitely going to get into why that is. This webcast is about is very personal to me. I'll start with that because it reflects what I think are our industry, our communities, priorities in EB-5 right now. And this is based on really having, I would say, grown up in EB-5 as a professional. I started out in my law career in large-scale commercial transactions, and then moved quickly into lender representation from equity side representation. And then kind of by happenstance fell into immigration and general business immigration. And from there, serendipitously, felicitously, fell into EB-5 around 2002, 2003, when the service actually sent out notices to the then about 19 or 20 designated regional centers asking what they were up to, kind of signaling that the service was open to business, if you will, with respect to EB-5 after a long period in dormancy, after the 4 precedent decisions came down in 1998, effectively closing the door to further growth in the EB-5 Regional Center program. And really, my professional career has been defined by EB-5. And so I speak from that place. I speak from being marinated, from having lived in and continuing to live in, continuing to be dedicated to this practice. I founded Carolyn Lee PLLC in 2019 to focus exclusively on investment immigration, and in particular, doubling down on EB-5 at a time when the market had just about completely shut down. This was after the announcement of the backlogs, when it became evident that we would be seeing a decade of backlogs in the most vibrant EB-5 market. So, and my friends asked me at the time, kind of laughingly, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to be founding a law firm that is dedicated to EB-5 at this time when it's shutting down? And my answer was a resounding yes, and absolutely. This was the time to rebuild EB-5, to rebuild my practice in EB-5, to see where further we could go, where hadn't we looked before. And I have been so rewarded and continue to be rejuvenated, revived, excited about all the places we can go in this incredible practice and in this incredible ecosystem that is US investment immigration, with the backbone of it being EB-5. So that's my personal context. And so from all of that, closing out fiscal 2025, what do we need to do as we look ahead to fiscal 2025 when we know so much will be happening? How do we focus? How do we begin to get a handle on what should be our priorities? Those of us who are in EB-5 who care about this visa category, what do we need to, how do we need to orient ourselves? And that's what this is about. And it's really also about identifying a community. We have fantastic advocacy channels and advocates who are doing the work. And could we be a further resource to their work? Could we build our own channel? Could we be our own voice? And that is what this is also about. It's an exploration of, can we add to this dynamic time and this space? Can we add value ourselves in a unique way? So if what I'm saying today, if what I'm throwing down today speaks to you, resonates with you, please let us know. Send us a word at contact@carolynleeplllc.com with the subject line advo or advocacy, and let us know whether what we're saying today, what I'm saying today resonates with you, whether you want to participate in however this shapes up. It may be something, it may be just information sharing, but let us see together. So I think we have 4 things that we want to concentrate on as advocates, as those who care about the future of this program. Number 1, it's EB-5 forever. It's permanence. We have had the regional center program in pilot form, in temporary form, despite the billions of dollars that it's brought to our economy, despite the hundreds of thousands of jobs it has created. It remains a pilot, a temporary program that has to be renewed. And with every renewal, there's drama. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Will there be a gap? How long will it be? Do we ride on these other vehicles? Will we be alone? How do we get there? And permanence is the way to achieve the stability that we desperately need, that investors and regional centers and professionals in this space long for and deserve. Is dependability, is stability, is something we can count on. And I'll share a story. Must have been maybe over 10 years ago now. USCIS had series of stakeholder meetings and educational sessions. And during one of them, the service hosted the SEC, US Securities and Exchange Commission. And there were subject matter experts for the 33 Act, 34 Act, 40 Act. And it was an incredible session because firstly, it signaled that our securities laws are a part of the EB-5 program. Let there be no mistake. And it also brought in the agency's subject matter experts to talk about these important areas. And I think about that very often in my practice, time and time again, and in my communications efforts like this, because that's what we need. That's what we need in EB-5 is we need a law that's 90 years old instead of 3 years old. We need permanence. We need agency subject matter experts who are careerists, who know they can, and all of us who know we can build a career, build our practice, grow our expertise in EB-5. And the only way that can happen is if we have a stable, permanent EB-5 regional center program. So EB-5 forever, permanence. The second priority is resetting the grandfather clock. We have a grandfathering provision in the RIA, but it sunsets a year earlier than the law itself. The RIA itself sunsets September 30, 2027. The grandfathering provision sunsets September 30, 2026, a year ahead of it. Fiscal 2025. I'm sorry, fiscal 2026. And we can just imagine what that will create. I would say a form of urgency that we experienced in 2015, 2016, when we believed that the law, because it wasn't permanent, may change radically. Contours change, investment amounts going up dramatically, the unknown, and investors and families who were on the sidelines, who maybe would have invested at a more natural time further down the road, rushed in. And we had the great rushes of 2015 and 2016, which in some respects were, yes, it was great from a commercial standpoint. There was a ton of fundraising and projects filling up, and as a result, capital and job creation. But also it did have a dark side, which is that the demand for these limited investor visas experienced an unnatural surge. And as a result, we had the backlog, the decade-long backlog, and the age outs, and the expectations dashed, and the I would say dreams deferred and unfulfilled as a result of all of that. So this is about my first point about making the EB-5 program permanent is really an outgrowth of that profoundly. Let's avoid that. Let's avoid the chaos. Let's avoid the drama. Okay? And that is what all of that in a miniature form is what I anticipate we will see in 2026 as we near the grandfathering deadline. And again, it's let's not, be prudish about all the great things in the sense of projects doing well and providers doing well, in the sense that we'll get more activity in these times. But that is going to be accompanied by that darker side as well of a heightened sense of urgency and the decisions, and that may not be made at the best time at this time. And also the information challenges. We may not have the clarity of the best information floating to the fore. We may not have the best quality projects. In other words, there will be a rush to take advantage of this urgency and some measure of disorder that will come from all of this. Well, short of making the program permanent and thereby being free of these dramas altogether, I think another fix would be at least to make the grandfathering sunset line up with the program sunset, the RIA sunset in 2027. That would at least avoid us having two shocks to the system over the course of 2 years. There is work to do on the grandfathering front. So the second, resetting the grandfather clock. The third advocacy priority, talk to me. This is about opening up the dialogue, opening up the conversation with USCIS. And this may sound completely foreign to those of us coming into this space in recent years, because we simply haven't had this experience of talking to the agency and exchanging information, viewpoints about how the program is translating on the ground. And I will submit to you that there is a precedent for this. A precedent that we should look back to and learn from and draw from. We used to have conversations with the director. We would have fairly regular stakeholder meetings in person in Washington, D.C. We would have teleconferences. The one that I mentioned with the SEC leadership was in San Diego. I think there was an in-person and a teleconference component. At that time, I dialed in. And let there be no mistake about that, and not to be Pollyannish about it. It wasn't like we all sat down and it was any, sort of a love fest. Far from it. These were opportunities for frank discussion about some very, very difficult interpretive and policy issues. The agency has acknowledged several times that EB-5 adjudications is among the hardest. It's among the most complex of what the agency examiners do. So it makes sense to have the industry's viewpoints on some very difficult and complex policy issues. And it isn't to say that those conversations will necessarily result directly in policy reformulation or change or anything of that sort, because it'll also give the private sector the chance to hear from the government. What are we missing? We clearly don't have all the answers, but it is an opportunity to connect and come together and share these different viewpoints, completely lawyered up, with both sides, if you will, with respective policy and legal advisors. But just sitting around the table together, pencils sharpened, sleeves rolled up, let's tackle this. This may sound like a ridiculous pipe dream. And there is also the argument that a section in the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act, specifically Section 107, prohibits this kind of dialogue. Far from the truth. I have run the analysis very closely and presented it in different contexts. Section 107 of the RIA does not bar dialogues of this kind with advocacy groups. It does bar interested parties, for example, specific benefit applicants like 956F applicants, projects, regional centers, new commercial enterprises, like I-526E petitioners, investors. Those parties cannot dialogue directly with USCIS. However, Section 107 does not prohibit trade groups, industry groups, advocacy groups, bar associations from meeting with the agency in just the manner in which I described. And it's important to bring the right spirit into these kinds of conversations. I think trust is really fundamental. We've got to go into this with a desire to listen and to present a viewpoint in its most reasoned, well-reasoned light. So in other words, if I want to advocate for a particular interpretation or particular policy, I wouldn't want to go in there and say, come on, do it this way, because no, respectfully, I would want to analyze the legal authority that supports that position, and bring specific examples of how that translates on the ground in specific relevant contexts, whether it's relating to project implementation or the investor's journey. And that's really the way to be more persuasive, rather than anything else. So the right spirit, bringing that into this is, I think, it's ineffable. It's difficult to put into words. It's difficult to legislate, right? But it is really critical. Building our future through EB-5. What makes EB-5 so special? It's that it's one of these rare things that is not completely without controversy, but it is almost universally, or it can be universally agreed upon, that it's mostly a great thing. Why? Because it brings jobs to the United States, because it brings capital, foreign investor capital. So by definition, it's not capital that we have here. Although it could be sourced here, but it's capital that is being brought by foreign investors, okay? Into US projects. They have to be sited onshore in the United States. And of course, our vetting applies 100%. These investors have to be admissible. And they're the brightest, and they're entrepreneurial. Not all of them, but that they're bringing that energy, the best and the brightest, and interested in helping our economy, in developing that entrepreneurial spirit. It's fantastic. Why wouldn't we want to make this at least permanent? And if not, indeed, to expand it. So we can do this. We absolutely must. And I invite you to join me in this. We've got to continue to talk about this. We've got to act, coalesce, come together. We at least have got to fix the grandfathering sunset that's happening in 2026. Looking ahead to that. Well, I hope that was reasonably articulate, and I look forward to hearing from folks in the weeks and months to come. Hopefully weeks, because we don't have a lot of time before September 30, 2026, and whatever fix we put into place will have to be initiated long before that, as early as possible. I'm kind of thinking between March and June of 2026 is really the absolute latest we have to get this in play. In other good news, we have some forward movement on India unreserved. We advanced about 14 months there, so that's fantastic. I think that speaks to an overestimation of India demand in the unreserved side and the pre-RIA cases. So that's good. Not sure whether that's really portentous of jumps of this kind in unreserved in the future, in fiscal 2026, but it was certainly very, very welcome. And then on the flip side, we had some sliding back retrogression in chart B for China by about 3 months. So, and that speaks to the opposite. It speaks to the increasing demand on the chart B adjustment and admission and conditional green card status for Chinese investors. So that's also something that we'll be keeping a very, very close eye on, in addition to, of course, holding our breath every month as the visa bulletin comes out and seeing whether the set-asides remain current. It seems like based on the pace of 526E adjudications and visa issuances that that we may see a protraction of the period of time we have before we see cutoffs in the set-aside categories, but that really doesn't really give us any specifics. Is it November, December, January, February, March? No way of knowing. All right. I'll hang out for a couple of minutes to take some questions. Yep, one question was, will there be further movement in unreserved India in fiscal 2026? So as I just said, I think that the 14-month forward movement in unreserved for India was very, very welcome, but I don't see any indication that that's you know, that means that we'll see jumps like that in the future. We may, and I hope we do, but I don't think that this is itself indicative of that to come. Okay, final word. The G season is a coming. 956Gs due December 29th as ever. And so I encourage all of the regional centers out there to close your books September 30th and start pivoting to your G preparation, all your attachment ones and any updates, and to get your Gs filed as soon as possible. Because if we do have cutoffs being announced late in the year, in the holiday season, your attention is going to be on the investors. And so the last thing that you'll want to also have to get out, and it is important, are your Gs. So anticipate completing your Gs, closing the books, getting them filed well before December 29th. And we will be posting some helpful deadlines and other information checklists on our website on the Gs shortly. I'll take just a couple of more questions because we have a little bit of time. One question is, does the sunset clause impact both the EB-5 direct and the regional center programs? The answer is no. The standalone program is permanent. It is a permanent fixture in the Immigration Nationality Act, and so that will not sunset. That's what we want for the Regional Center program, which is where 90+% of the usage comes from. Do you have any comments regarding the regarding I-829 process and recent trends? Yes, and it's not good. The 829s are experiencing in some instances denials based on source of funds issues. If the project has not created enough jobs, if there are other issues with the project, that will always arise and create risk in 829 adjudication. That's not new. What is new is denials of 829s, noids and denials based on lawful source of funds issues. So this is about 526s approved, often many years ago, being revisited in the 829 context, despite the Ninth Circuit decision won by my dear friend and legend, Ira Kurzban. Ninth Circuit decision, Chang versus the United States. It says that 526 approval should be an excellent predictor of 829 approval. And in some instances, it is proving not to be the case. And in an area where you would think that the adjudication is sewn up and done with 526 approval. Related to that, where there are 829 denials, the petitioners, the investors are going straight to removal proceedings. NTAs are issuing together notices to appear, NTAs, the charging instrument that starts the removal proceedings being issued together with 829 approvals. So the removal proceedings are, there's no daylight between 829 denials and removal proceedings starting now. These are times to be very, very, very careful. And we can't eliminate all risk, not in EB-5. Risk is baked in. It is, in fact, a requirement of the EB-5 program. So we can't eliminate it, but this is certainly the time to take off as much of it as possible. That's what we're committed to. Very well. Thank you for joining us as ever. I look forward to hearing from you, from many of you. Contact at, and until next time, farewell and be well. Bye-bye.